Doctor, can we talk about cancer a little bit? Various types out there. What are some of the things in terms of your patients, and what some of the things that you've been able to do?
A better thing in cancer in the United States. There was a study that was published, I believe it was in 1994. It was a 12-year program, 12-year study. They looked at adults who had developed cancer as an adult, not childhood cancer, but adult cancer, right? And this is the main types of cancer that we get here in the United States. They did a meta-analysis of these people all around the world who developed cancer as adults for 12 years and were treated with chemo. And they looked at the results. And they published the results in the Journal of Clinical Oncology. And the results? 97% of the time, chemotherapy does not work. 97% of the time, it doesn't work. So why is it still used? It's one reason, and one reason only: money. If you go to a medical doctor, an MD, with a sinus infection, and that doctor prescribes an antibiotic, he gets no financial kickback. Now, if he prescribes 5,000, of that antibiotic in 1 month, the drug company that makes it might send him to Cancun for a conference, right? Mm-hmm. But he gets no direct remuneration. It's not with chemotherapeutic drugs. It's different. Chemotherapeutic drugs are the only classification of drugs that the prescribing doctor gets a direct cut of. So if your doctor prescribes chemotherapy for you, here's how it goes, more or less. The doctor buys it from the pharmaceutical company for $5,000, sells it to the patient for $12,000, insurance pays $9,000, and the doctor pockets the $4,000 difference. And there ought to be a law. The only reason chemotherapy is used is because doctors make money from it. Period. It doesn't work 97% of the time. If Ford Motor Company made an automobile that exploded 97% of the time, would they still be in business? No. This is the tip of the iceberg of the control that the pharmaceutical industry has on us. Most people have no idea of this at all. Now, I wrote a book. It's called The MD Emperor Has No Clothes, right? In my book, I have a bulleted list of 10 questions that every cancer patient should ask their doctor. 10 questions. I've had patients kicked out, literally, kicked out of the oncologist's office because the doctor was PO'd that the patient was asking him these questions. And these are just common sense questions. Cancer treatment in the United States, we have lost the war on cancer. We have lost the war on cancer. Why? Because cancer is not a reductionistic phenomenon. Cancer is a holistic phenomenon. And when you try to bring a reductionistic methodology like drugs and surgery to bear on a holistic phenomenon, you will completely miss the boat each and every time. You cannot do it. Medical doctors are like colorblind art critics. They can see that that's a boat. They can see the black and white outline, but they're completely blind to all of the colors and textures that make up the substance of the thing. It's no difference with cancer. The reason that people get cancer in the United States and the reason that we have completely lousy outcomes is because medical doctors are driving the research bus. When women get together and do a 5K run for breast cancer, all of that money, do you think any of that money goes to nutritional research? Do you think any of that money goes to homeopathic research or acupuncture or traditional Chinese medicine or naturopathic research? No.
1997? 27 years ago? And they write a book about a 502-page book about what the world's going to be like in the year 2025, not 2026. If this was predicted 27 years ago, somebody knew something. Okay, here's the list. This is an abbreviated list. I could have made it much longer. You know I can. fast mutating viral disease pandemics, genetically developed vaccines, smart IDs, DNA database tracking, DNA chips. Get this one. 1997, gene-based pharmaceuticals. Transmitting genetic instructions for a disease process. How about this one? You ready for it? Wait for it. Artificial intelligence to determine gene patterns. 27 years ago, who had heard about AI? Apparently they had. How about this one? Robots for doing genome sequencing. And then, this one blew me away. Using recombinant DNA for making spike proteins. 1997? It gets even worse. Smart homes. They have a whole chapter on smart homes / smart cities. This one will absolutely floor you. It did me. In 1997, and this is, you can do the word search and research yourself. They predicted, not 2025, but by 2020, that people would be working from home virtually. Digital currency, and last but certainly not least, vaccination programs. I'm sorry, I gotta chuckle, because if I don't, I'll cry. Vaccination programs run by organizations like the World Health Organization for a global killer that has yet to emerge. That's amazing accuracy. How did you do that? Oh, I know how you did it. Because you're the one who planned it.
Of any vaccine saving so much as one life. In fact, they are bioweapons, and if you give them to a young child, and the younger the child, the more destructive they are to that immune system. And so it's a combination. It's a combination. If you know where the WHO comes from, I think I put a note down here to where it comes from. But anyway, it was started up by Rockefeller. And what was Rockefeller into? Eugenics. Euthanasia and eugenics. That was Rockefeller back in the 30s. They own the WHO. They own the NIH. So now the game is, these people aren't dying fast enough. We can make a lot more money, and they'll die a lot faster if we put out these vaccines and we use them on small children. Children first. And then we make it compulsory. Then we can even say the kid can't go to school unless he's vaccinated. Mandatory vaccines are murder in the first degree. That is what they are. You're invading a person's body with poisons. And the shock is horrible. In real life, you don't have to deal with 10 different germs, viruses at once, usually one at a time. But when they give a child a vaccine, or anybody, but children the worst, and that system is soaking up in an instant all these poisons I just listed here, plus a lot of viruses, they don't tell you what they are. The immune system, especially of a child, just throws up its hands in horror and says, I can't cope. This is too much. This is not like real life. They give you an overwhelming amount of poisons at one time. And that's what happened.
Hi, I'm Scott O'Neill here in Medellin, Colombia today, and I'm at the world's biggest mosquito factory for the World Mosquito Program. We're making in here 30 million mosquitoes a week. Come and have a look. We're doing it for a very serious reason. Cities like Medellin have suffered from diseases like dengue, Zika, chikungunya for decades, but not anymore. We've been able to bring the solution of Wolbachia mosquitoes to this city. When this bacteria called Wolbachia gets introduced into the mosquito, it stops their ability to transmit dengue. We release mosquitoes that have Wolbachia. Now they go and mate, and Wolbachia gets passed into the wild mosquito population. If we're going to control these diseases in all the tropical cities of the world, it's going to require a lot of mosquitoes.
But when I got the emergency use authorization documents as soon as I could, which was still 2020, and I read the ingredients, I knew we had a major problem, which is it was not a vaccine. This is not a vaccine. It's never been a vaccine. It's a genetic experiment at best. And that's without even talking about all the nanotech. Just talking about the biological elements. You have a highly chemically contaminated, highly DNA adulterated genetic experiment in an infinite tissue penetration delivery system of pegylated nanoparticles. I mean, this is Frankenstein science. So at that point, at the end of 2020, I realized that we were looking at a major crime against humanity, and doctors were all silent because we lived in a realm where it was like you go along with everything COVID and you keep your pay and you don't really have to work anymore. You could just do Zoom meetings with patients once in a while. But if you go against us in any way, you're like a major threat to society because you're going against public health, and public health is so bright. So actually, when I saw the injection ingredients, I actually sold my house, sold all my investments, resigned all my privileges, resigned my job. I was the second most senior doctor in my hospital. I mean, a guy with a really good career who was, almost coming into semi-retirement, grandchildren to play with on the weekend, and a horse in the backyard. I gave all that up because of how obvious the danger was, of how obvious the deception, and the fact that this was a very toxic lie. And so I set everything down. I told the College of Physicians and Surgeons, I'm taking a sabbatical from all clinical work. I'm not practicing medicine. I'm just doing human rights activism. And I set my mind to research, education, and I've been a full-time whistleblower and activist since that time. Strangely, despite that, they still come after me because they're all compromised. And if you look at the history of mRNA research, and we've published this at the World Council for Health 2 years ago. Dr. Laurie and others were involved in the study. If you look at the history of mRNA drugs of any kind, all of them have been failures. And there's been less than 400 humans were ever experimented with mRNA. And then the whole world was going to take it, and they're calling it a safe and effective vaccine rather than a ridiculous genetic experiment. So no surprises, we are where we are. We've never had so many people injured and killed by anything short of bombs in the history of mankind. And we're still doing our best like you guys.
You're an absolute hero. And, listening to your story, all that passes my mind, Mike, is if every doctor had done what you did, if every doctor had said, I will not be used as really a weapon of war, because are you aware of Andrew Bridgen and many others now saying this was this roots back to the Department of Defense. It is a biological weapon, and it needs to be exposed as such. Are you aware of that link?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I've spoke with Sasha Latipova as well. The Department of Defense controlled the whole thing. And this is all, there's layers upon layers of them creating in I would call it delusional mind. And I say that based on our determination, all of us, but their delusional mind that they can play all these paperwork games and shuffle the cards and walk away with no liability for mass murder. And we're here to make sure that doesn't happen.